Let's talk about Corey Graves because he was in the news this week, and a lot of people debating whether or not this whole situation is a shoot. Is it a work? Is he going to wrestle again? Is he genuinely unhappy? Is WWE going to get rid of him? Is he trying to get fired? A lot of questions around Corey Graves. Now, if you watched NXT the night after the Raw debut on Netflix, which of course had Michael Cole and Pat McAfee as the announce team because that was always the plan. That was not anything new. That was something that was known for months. But the very next night on NXT for New Year's Evil, they had an addition in the booth with Vic Joseph and Booker T. Corey Graves was there. And Corey Graves, introduced himself, and then Vic Joseph said a few words, and I made the comment at the time, Corey Graves, the look that he had on his face, if looks could kill, it would have been a massacre at the Shrine Auditorium that night. He did not look very happy at all. And clearly, if he was genuinely unhappy, he wanted the world to know it because, again, just ice cold daggers staring back at you when you looked at him. And he wasn't on SmackDown that week. They have gone with Joe Tessitore and Wade Barrett as the two-man booth on USA on Friday nights. So about an hour or so, or within the hour after Raw went off the air this past Monday, Corey Graves posted a tweet that got a lot of people talking. And he did not seem very happy at all. And in this tweet, which was not only, aimed, obviously, it was a message for the fans, but clearly it was also a message that was aimed at the powers that be in WWE. He said, imagine chasing your dream, then being told, not deciding, that you're no longer physically able to pursue your dream. Then you dedicate your life to something, quote, dream adjacent, and being pretty fucking awesome at it. And then when it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor, being told that you're not famous enough for your own job, just in case you've wondered where I've been. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to read between the lines here and know that he's talking about being brushed aside for Pat McAfee. That Pat McAfee is the bigger name, and he's not on Raw anymore, and he's not even on SmackDown. Now they have relegated him to NXT. And, some people don't want to use this word, but I'll go ahead and use it. It's a demotion. If let's say everything is on the up and up here, and they really did move Corey Graves from Raw and SmackDown to NXT, it's okay to call it what it is. It is a demotion. It is not a reflection of the quality of the show. NXT could be the greatest wrestling show on the planet, and there are probably some people out there who think that that's the case. It doesn't matter. It could be a shit show. It could be a great show. The fact is, the fans have been conditioned to understand that Raw and SmackDown are the big leagues. Raw and SmackDown is considered main roster. There's a reason why the term main roster exists and is still used. That is what Mondays and Fridays are. When you are on NXT, you are aspiring to eventually make your way to the main roster. That's the way it has always worked. That's the way it will always work. No matter how hard they try to push NXT as being on the level of the other two, it's not the case. Same goes for the announcers. You don't think that Vic Joseph wouldn't love to work as the play-by-play voice one day on Monday Night Raw? Or on Friday Night SmackDown, if they came to him and said, hey, we're not telling you, but we're offering it to you, that he wouldn't turn around and say, oh my God, thank you so much. Of course, yes, absolutely. So it's a demotion. And if you're Corey Graves, you can understand why he would legitimately be upset, if you believe that he is legitimately upset. Now, the next morning, he followed up on his tweet from the night before, and he wrote, I've got a lot to say. Don't miss hashtag WWE NXT tonight on the CW. And then he put a microphone emoji and a fire emoji, a flame emoji. And as soon as I saw that, I said, okay, clearly this is just, they're working us here. And they're probably going to have some kind of, he's going to drop a giant Joey Styles-esque pipe bomb on NXT, and they're probably going to pop a big number out of it too, right? So obviously they're working some kind of an angle here. But Mike Johnson, a PW Insider, first reported that day that Graves had been pulled. A few hours later, he had been pulled from Tuesday's NXT taping, where he was scheduled to appear and do color commentary. I mean, he said as much in his tweet. But he indicated that Graves was spotted at Orlando International Airport going through TSA, and leaving the city where NXT was being taped that night because he still lives in Pittsburgh. And so presumably he was leaving Orlando for Pittsburgh because that's where he lives with Carmella and their son. Now, his tweets stayed up for a few days before he eventually deleted them, and he has been silent ever since. Now, I think he also was the person responsible for doing commentary on WWE's Speed, which is their show on X. And instead, this week, they had the commentator for Main Event. I guess Blake Howard is his name. He sat in for Corey Graves. And so he has not been seen or heard from since, and nobody really knows exactly what's going on or how this is going to turn out. A lot of people have chimed in on this. Jim Ross, of course, is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, play-by-play voice in the history of wrestling. And he chimed in on his podcast and basically put it like this. He said, "Would you trade Pat McAfee and his massive broadcast platform for Corey Graves? I wouldn't, to be honest." And again, he's not saying that Graves is a shitty announcer. He's just looking at it the way the WWE presumably is looking at it and saying, look, Pat McAfee is a star and Corey Graves is not. Pat McAfee has a profile outside of wrestling and Corey Graves does not. Pat McAfee is involved in a lot of different things, not just his own show. That's why he leaves and he dips out and comes back because he does ESPN and ESPN College Game Day. Nobody would deny that he's a bigger star than Corey Graves is. So that's what Jim Ross is saying. Now, Corey's brother, Sam Adonis, who also wrestles, he chimed in on Twitter and just simply said, "Not a work." And he has since deleted that tweet. Although, let's be honest here, if it was a work, right, I would get my brother to lie for me too. If not, I would just kick his ass. Now, interestingly, Pat McAfee is not going to be appearing on Raw tomorrow night, although it doesn't have anything to do with any of this drama. But he is going to be a part of ESPN's coverage for the college football national championship game. And so that's what he's going to be doing tomorrow night. I don't know who's going to be sitting in his place. Normally it would be Corey Graves, but I don't know if it's going to be Corey Graves or not. By the time you listen to this, we may already know the answer to that question. Meltzer in The Observer says that people close to him, those in WWE, and even his brother said that the situation was not a work. However, it was confirmed to us, of course he says us, he means him, with a message that even those sources at WWE believed he was trying to get fired based on those two tweets, that he was absolutely not, and was just trying to blur the lines and create some buzz. The story starts a few months back. At one point, the belief was, and we were directly told, that when Pat McAfee returned after football season and Raw went to Netflix, that the announcing teams would be Michael Cole and McAfee on Raw and Joe Tessitore and Graves on SmackDown. Now, we knew about Cole and McAfee. I was always of the impression that when it came to SmackDown, they would have a three-man booth. Because where else are you going to put Wade? Where else are you going to put Joe? Or not Joe, but Joe was always going to have his seat. But where would Corey go? Where would Wade go? You would have a three-man booth with Joe in the middle. But nothing was ever officially announced on that. And some of these reports indicate that maybe Graves only recently found out that was not going to be the case. Maybe he was under the same impression. And if that's the case, you can understand his frustration. You can understand him feeling disrespected if it played out that way. But again, to go back to the question, is this for real or not? Is this a shoot or a work? You got to remember, 6 years ago, 2018, Booker T and Corey Graves, they manufactured their own little mini feud. And how did it all start? It all started because Booker T, on his radio show in Houston, he needed time to fill for one of the segments. I think at the end of the show, he and his co-host Brad Gilmore, shout out to Brad, they didn't have anything to talk about. They had to come up with something. And so how did they fill time? Booker started taking shots, I guess, at Corey Graves and, needling him and all that. And so Corey just sort of leaned into it. And so on Twitter and on Raw, he was making comments about Booker T and taking shots at him. And there was never any animosity there. He admitted later on, we just made the whole thing up. But yet you had all these media outlets, USA Today and Forbes. Everybody picked it up like, oh, there's brewing tension behind the scenes in WWE. It's spilled over now onto television and social media between Booker T and Corey Graves. and that was never the case. All that to say that we don't know what we don't know. Could it be a work? Sure. And according to Meltzer, it was a case of Corey trying to manufacture something on his own. It's like the Chris Charlton thing. I just talked about that whole situation with New Japan, where he kind of went into business for himself at Wrestle Kingdom or Wrestle Dynasty at least. And especially during the Kenny Omega match with Gabe Kidd, he was going in hard on Tony Khan and AEW, called him a money mark, and was, criticizing his usage of some of the big names that left New Japan to go to AEW, and making all kinds of comments to the point where they had Rocky Romero go out there to join on commentary, because Rocky is a VP in both AEW and New Japan. He's sort of the bridge between the two companies, and he was trying to calm Chris down. And I still feel like in that situation, if they were really upset and Chris really did go into business for himself, I'm sure his intentions were good, but you have a stern conversation with him and let him know that you can't pull that shit ever again or you're out of here, instead of suspending the guy like they did. But according to Meltzer, it was a case of Corey going into business for himself and trying to create something out of nothing. I don't know. Meltzer's track record is not that great recently, so who knows? But that's from him as far as what he was supposedly told. Do I believe that he was trying to get fired? Give me a fucking break. Trying to get fired to do what? Where would he go? It doesn't make any sense. He's in a great position where he is right now. And let's just take it at face value and say, okay, this is a real situation. Because I believe he is legitimately frustrated. He could have taken that frustration and tried to work it into something. Maybe that's what happened. But I do believe the frustration and the feelings are genuine. And he has every right to feel that way. If I were in his shoes, I would feel the same way. Would I go out and tweet the things that he tweeted? Maybe not. I don't know. You get angry. Your emotions, they get the better of you sometimes. There's no telling what you might do, what you might say. But he has every right to feel that way if that's how he feels. But I could also see it from WWE's perspective, where it's like, look, you were never getting Raw. Okay, we already made it very clear that when he's back from football, it's going to be him and Cole. And him and Cole, they're like best friends. So, they have a natural chemistry. They work well together. McAfee can be very, very annoying and get on my nerves on commentary. He's not the worst I've ever heard. He has his moments, but, it's kind of hit or miss with me. Graves is very good at what he does. Corey Graves took a negative and he turned it into a huge positive because he was told, we're not going to medically clear you. You've had one too many concussions. Same thing with Christian. Christian had one too many concussions and they told him your career is over. He said, no, you know what? My career is not over. And he went to AEW. And he's been able to stay healthy ever since. And Christian has had a very fruitful last few years working in AEW. And he was the TNA champion at one point too. But Graves had to let it go. And that's a tough thing to do when you're told that, look, this thing that you've been doing your whole life and you've always wanted to do is being taken away from you. A lot of wrestlers have gone through the same thing, right? Adam Copeland, Bryan Danielson. So he transitioned into the announce role and turned out to be really good at it. And he even did play-by-play for a while there last year. And I thought it's something that he was not accustomed to doing, and I thought he did a good job with it. Clearly they were setting up for somebody to take the reins of that play-by-play spot more long-term. But I thought for the time that he did it, I thought that Graves did a good job. He is medically cleared. He talked about this on Chris Van Vliet's show in 2022. He said he was medically cleared to wrestle again, but he admitted that he had genuinely grown to love doing commentary, which of course he did. You don't have to take bumps anymore. What's not to like? You still get to be part of it. You're right there at ringside, but you don't have to take all the bumps. That sounds like a pretty good deal to me. So he genuinely enjoys doing commentary. Could they turn this into an angle where we get a match with him and McAfee at WrestleMania? I thought that was going to happen at Survivor Series a few years ago, and it never did. Yes. You got 2 nights of WrestleMania. It's Las Vegas. You want to put together some attractions. I don't know that match is going to sell a single fucking ticket, but it would be an attraction that they could throw on the show. And if Graves really wanted to get back in the ring, like Nigel McGuinness, right? A few months ago, he got back in the ring, even though he's been doing announcing. McAfee really is the only name that would make sense for it. But I don't know if that's anything that they're actually planning on doing. So we're just going to have to wait and see who fills in for Pat tomorrow night, because it could very well be that Corey is back and everything is smoothed over. If it is legitimate and he is very upset about this, hopefully they'll get everything worked out, because I do think he's an asset to them. If he leaves WWE, is the whole machine going to fall apart? No, there isn't any one person who's going to leave and the whole thing falls apart. But I think he makes the WWE product better. So hopefully everything will be worked out. And if they want to turn it into something, they can. But you can never be sure with these things. I think the feelings are legitimate, but a lot of real feelings have been turned into a wrestling angle before. So it certainly wouldn't be the first time if that's what happened here. But I can see it from both sides. And if Corey Graves is upset over something that happened at work, right? People vent sometimes about things that happened at work. I don't think what he tweeted out there was, horrendous. It's not like he went out there and just, buried the company or buried any specific people and named names. So it's not a fireable offense. Hopefully they'll get back on the same page and everything will be fine in the end.